Welcome to Deal Talk. I'm Jeffrey Veit. As usual, we're going to talk about avoiding dealer tricks and buying smart so that you can save big when you purchase a car, a truck, motorcycle, boat, motorhome, yada, yada, yada. An email this week asked about the help you might get from a used vehicle window label, like a Monroney, but only on a used vehicle. Like I mentioned in last week's episode, used vehicle labels are good for one thing: the equipment list. That is required to be accurate by law. Other than that, they're not worth anything because the price doesn't come from some magic pricer at the factory. The price comes from whatever the dealer wants to get for it. And the gas mileage, things like that are just estimate. They can estimate whatever they want. They can make it look like whatever they want. Don't pay attention to that stuff, You should get your list of what the equipment is from looking at the vehicle. The equipment list is required, though, so it has to be accurate. All other information can be conjecture or whatever, but you can get a copy of the original window sticker from the site MonroneyLabel.com. I think just about every vehicle in the last 10, 12, 15 years is on there. So you can get a copy of the original Monroney label to see what was originally on the vehicle. So if there's something missing, you'll know something's gone wrong there, or maybe there's more on there than what you thought, which would be good news, right? That's how you take care of the window label. Don't pay any attention to those things. Reading an industry magazine, electric vehicle sales are slowing and inventories are building. Things like stories on the battery issues and fires and repair costs are becoming more known to the public, and the public's getting the information. It's not fake news providing it. And, I was watching a show today on YouTube, a quick one this morning when I was having my coffee, and there was a lady on there by the last name was Curry. She was a professor at a university in Georgia, I believe. She ended up leaving because she was a climate change person that believed in climate change. And then some other scientists sent her some research that she wasn't aware of, and she changed her mind. She was wrong, she said. Now, of course, she had to leave her job, and now she runs a weather service. And it's, they put a tremendous pressure on a lot of the people that are talking about that have a scientific background that are saying that climate change, is affected by, fossil fuels and things, are being forced, or they lose their job, or they're being pressured in the corner. It's all baloney now. It's becoming well known that way. Anyway, so that's about all I've got for the EV news, is that it's just not what it appears to be, and now people are starting to catch on. These vehicles are not what you want, that's for sure. This week's subject is kind of an attachment to last week's used vehicle buying episode. Spending as little as possible until the economy recovers is what it's really about. Not only are cars, trucks, and motorcycles more, but interest rates are the highest they've been in 15 years. That's a big factor on a vehicle, right? The quacks claiming an improved economy might be right compared to last month, but consider Biden's term in office. It's a terrible situation. Prices are still way up. Our subject are those used vehicles, still up 20 to 25%. When you compare the percentage of food and gas, it seems better. One thing for sure about my podcast is that I don't have much advertising. I don't advertise for much of anything. I can't represent any specific dealer. Well, maybe a couple, but products have to prove themselves to me, and I don't think that the product world's been that great lately. So recently, a company contacted me actually, and by email, and said they wanted me to represent their product on my podcast. The product's called Magic Mind. So I said, sure, but I don't know how it works. I can't do that. Send me some, I'll try it, and I'll let you know. They sent it to me. They called my bluff. They said, okay, and they sent me some. Well, here's the surprise. It's an energy booster thing that so many on the market to claim that will help you with your energy and all this stuff. And this is you see them on the internet all the time and on YouTube and stuff. Well, I'll tell you, this stuff actually does it. I could not believe it. I was freaked out. I can't believe it, how effective it is. I take vitamins already. I take B12, D3, vitamin E. I take a multivitamin. I take vitamins to stay healthy, right? And as a matter of fact, usually my energy lasts till pretty good. I have no problems till 4 o'clock. I start running out of juice. And by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, I'm kaput, right? Well, I drank this little concoction in the morning, and by day 4, I could not believe it. I could actually go all day. Sometimes I wasn't tired when I went to bed. I just know I have to go to bed or in the morning I'll be a grouch. So, I'd go to bed, but I was really full of energy. And they have these things in it like lion's root and all kinds of stuff in it. And it really is effective. It's at least 4 or 5 hours longer energy at least. But I feel better. I could tell right away. And it seemed quick to me. 3, 4 days and have it start taking effect really kind of shocked me. It really caught me off guard. This is no baloney. This is no company that's trying to pull your leg. This stuff actually works. If you don't, if you're not looking to improve your energy, well, then you don't buy the product, right? But if you want to have more energy, this one, and you know me, I don't advertise for people. I don't do things. This is the real McCoy, called Magic Mind. You get it at magicmind.com. That's Magic Mind, MAGICMIND.com. I'm telling you, it works. No bull. It really does. If you like the podcast, take a couple of minutes and do a review of Apple Podcasts or Google Play or whatever podcast source you use. If you've already done a review, thank you so much. Be sure to tell your friends and family about the podcast. That's one thing you got to remember to do that. They'll save money and you'll be a hero, guaranteed. That's the way it works. And I don't have anybody saying, you dirty rat, I'm paid more because of what you said. Everybody saves some money, some more than others. I agree, but some people know less about the process than others. Those of you who'd like some written material to carry with you when you're shopping, then get a copy of The Informed Buyer from Amazon Kindle or Barnes & Noble Nook. Either place, it'll give you the basics for a quick reference when you're in the buying process. It's in writing, and it costs $3. $3. And that's, what's that, 83 cents less than my Starbucks Venti Pike? I think it is. About 83 cents less than my Venti Pike. And this lasts for years, and the Venti Pike lasted about 30 minutes in my case. We've talked about buying used on the last episode, but we covered 3 categories really: late model, almost new, the CPO vehicles, and vehicles up to 4 or 5 years old. Some people's episode may have the wrong title describing lower priced used on the title, but the podcast is right, but a few of them got out with the wrong title on them. Sorry, but last week's covered the standard used. Right, that's August 5th, I think, or 7th. Anyway, that was the standard used. But if you did get the wrong title, sorry about that, The lower priced episode is this episode. This is what we're going to talk about. One thing I have talked about before in a previous episode, but needs more time, is buying cheap used vehicles, cheap ones, under $10,000, maybe under $5,000. A vehicle maybe under $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000. Many of the same ideas apply to the low-priced units, standard units, but the process changes in some cases, and it can be significant. And I say standard units. I'm not so sure that these aren't the standard units now because the economy's changed and people are realizing that the prices are way up. So if you got to get a vehicle, sometimes it's better to buy just something cheap so you don't lose much. If you lose 20% on a vehicle that was $4,000, that's $800. You lose 20% on a vehicle that was $20,000, that's $4,000. There's a big difference. So a lot of people are, hedging their bet and going with something cheap just to get them by until this craziness is over. Really, lower priced vehicles won't be from a new vehicle dealer anyway, usually. There's a good chance you are not, going to find it at that new dealer. And although the inventory shortages have forced dealers to change their boundaries a little bit, they're starting to hang on to some of those older vehicles, for the profit possibilities because they don't have enough new or whatever. There are things you need to check more thoroughly for those low price ranges when buying from an independent dealer, not a new car dealer, just an independent used car dealer with slightly more confidence. A security from a new vehicle dealer that's a little bit more secure to buy from a new vehicle dealer. They got a little more skin in the game. And you have to be totally careful when you buy from an individual because there's no recourse for you, really. Only on certain things, and we'll cover some of those. It won't hurt to check all of these in every case. I want to give you a list of things to check. And you say, well, on a really cheap vehicle, do I need to do it? Yeah. Even on a dealer, I would do it. I would check it, right? You got to make sure it's got a clean title. You want to ask the dealer, do you have the title? Do you have it? Because sometimes dealers are selling cars without the title. They're waiting for the state to send them the title. They shouldn't do that, but they do. And if there's a holdup with the title after you bought it, then they come back, get the vehicle. You've done things, things have changed. Make sure they have the title. Where is it? Is the mileage accurate on the title? You can ask them that. Dealer will tell you. You just want to make sure you got a clean, clear title. If you're buying from an individual, you don't pay them anything without the title. In the title. Nope. Not a thing. Same with a used car dealer. Do you have the title? Most of them, dealers, even independent dealers, can tell you the truth if he's got it or he doesn't. And if it's got a mileage discrimination on it, he has to tell you. If there's something wrong with the mileage on the vehicle and what's on the title, he's got to tell you by law. He's not going to take that gamble and not do that. So when it comes to an individual, you really should see it. Current condition. That's the next thing to consider, right? How is the engine and the transmission and the body and the interior and the tire and the service items? You got to check that stuff over. When you're looking for a vehicle that's priced at $1,500 or $2,000 or $3,000, the most important factor in that price range is the condition of the engine and tranny and the service items. That's the most important thing. You can't really be worrying too much about dings in the fenders or dirt in the seats or flood you might still worry about. That's something I would still consider even on a used vehicle. And it's going to have more dirt in the frame rails, but you can tell when it's been in a flood. If you see a flood vehicle, when you see it, you'll know you're seeing it. I'll guarantee you that. Usability. Is it unable to operate for long periods of time? So what happens a lot of times with a used vehicle, an older one, they get hot, but slower. So you can drive it for 15 minutes and it's not hot, and then all of a sudden it starts heating up because there's a crack someplace that expands, or it's running low on water, or it's got air pressure problem in the water system, or could be the bearings don't get lubricated. There's a lot of things. You just got to drive it around more than you normally would a used car to make sure it's going to be okay. That's important. Next, would usability work for you? If there's 5 of you in the family, right? Mom, dad, and 3 kids, a 4-passenger vehicle is not going to work. And a lot of times we forget to look at that, but you got to check that. You can get a ticket. You're driving around with a 4-passenger vehicle and you got 5 people in it, the cops can give you a ticket for that because it's dangerous. You don't have a seatbelt for everybody. Seatbelts are important. So make sure of that when you're looking. Safety. Do the safety items work? Safety would be next. For instance, how old are the tires? The tires are 8 or 9 years old. You're going to have to buy tires. They're just not safe. Do all the lights work? Do the brakes work? Is the glass all intact? There's no cracks in the glass. If there's an airbag, it probably doesn't work by that age, but if it does, you can tell whether it's been used or not, if it's disconnected. If the airbag's still connected and stuff, that's a lucky find for a really old vehicle, but that's not the important. You want to know the brakes and the lights and the glass and the tires. Those are the things I'm talking about, safety things. You got to check that stuff over. Shouldn't be driving around without that. If you got 8 or 9 year old tires, I don't care if there's tread on them. You got to plan on buying tires. I wouldn't have my family driving around in a car with 8 or 9 year old tires. Nope, because they blow. That's what happened. What's the cost of future repairs going to be like? Can you still get parts? Does the vehicle still have parts available? You can check that right online. Who fixes this? Right? Like, for instance, you got a chance to buy an older Mercedes-Benz. That's not a good idea. I'll tell you why. You think, well, it's a big old tank. Yeah, it's wonderful, but a repair might cost you as much as the vehicle cost you for one repair. It's one of the biggest reasons for not buying an electric vehicle. To get them fixed is crazy. You're going to spend crazy money getting them fixed, if it can even be fixed, if you can find somebody to fix it. Don't buy an electric vehicle. Don't. No, I don't care. Don't. Next would be fuel costs. It can be a big concern right now because, like, I bought gas today, and it was $3.94 a gallon where I live in Orlando, Florida. That's $4 a gallon. Gas mileage is important, right? And repair costs would be next, obviously, but gas mileage would be something to think about. If you're going to, you at least got to take it into consideration. You buy a big V8 engine, vehicle because somebody wants to get rid of it, you got to realize you're going to burn a lot more gas and it's going to cost you more per week. So if you're driving a long way, you might want to move on to something else. If you're not driving too far, it wouldn't be too bad. If you're looking in the up to 4,000 range, then you probably can't afford a gas guzzler or an expensive repair cost. So you got to look at that stuff. That's why you're buying that cheap vehicle in most cases, something under $4,000, because you can't afford anything else. And that means you can't afford to have a crazy expense. You got to look it over hard and long. And the gas mileage, you got to think about that. If you live close to work, a couple miles, 3, 4, 5 miles away, well, then gas mileage wouldn't be such a big deal. You could buy that gas guzzler if you're just going to drive to work. But if you're going to be driving 20 miles each way, 40 miles a day, and it's a gas guzzler, you're talking about, $10, $12 a day it's costing you just to drive it. Got to take that in consideration. Carfax. Now you think, cheap vehicle, what do I need a Carfax for? Always. It's $15 if you have to buy it, but the dealer will pay for it in the case, or even an independent dealer. As you go up in the price ladder, the order of importance changes because you can expect more for your money. Condition is still very important, but you start considering Carfax and appearance as nearly the same on any of them. I would look at the Carfax on any vehicle I was buying, unless I was just buying something for the demolition derby or something like that. But I don't know. I guess the Carfax is important. I give you, there's things that happen to vehicles in their life. Frame damage, it'll be on a Carfax. Well, it'll wear out tires. I've never seen a frame on a vehicle straightened perfectly. I've never seen it. Maybe it happens, but I've never seen it. You got to check over other things too. Like, for instance, let's say the whole vehicle's been repainted and it's 8 years old. You need to know why. I mean, was it hail damage, which wouldn't be so bad? That doesn't make any difference. But what if it was rust? You got to look it over underneath. You got to see. Another one would be price. Is it in line with the books? Don't spend your time trying to buy a $4,000 vehicle for $2,500. In the cheaper vehicles, you're not going to have the price negotiation ability of a newer used vehicle. Maybe 10%. Well, if it's a $4,000 vehicle, 10% is $400. The low-priced vehicles can be priced way out of line, though. That's the thing. If a dealer's got a really nice used vehicle and it books for $3,500, he might say, that's all right, I can get $5,000 for this because there's nothing else in the market. You need to know if you're way over on the book, because that's going to reflect later, but that's an argument to help get them down on the price. This is all ammunition that you can use in that case. What's the reliability of the information? What are the references saying about this model of vehicle in the past? If you go to a Consumer Report, yearly edition at the library, and you look up that particular vehicle that's 7 or 8 years old, what's it say about it back then? What's it say about it in the future? You can even look at a more recent one when it lists 10-year-old used cars, and you can see what the history has been. Now, I'm not saying that stops you from buying it, but you need to be aware. If it's always had problems with, they've had lots of problems with transmissions on that model, that means you need to check that over a little bit more before you buy it. And good information from a book like that can give you an indication of what you should be looking for in terms of a vehicle and what to expect in the future, but also which kind of vehicles to look for. And you're going to find out it's the same ones. There used to be some older domestics that were pretty good, and there probably still is, but I haven't run into many, an F-150 maybe, but it used to be you could buy a Plymouth Valiant, and they were a great vehicle. They don't even make them anymore, but they don't make Plymouths at all, but it was a good, or Dodge Dart had that slant 6. It wasn't really an economy vehicle. It got, okay gas mileage, maybe 17 or 18 miles a gallon on the highway, which isn't much for now, but back then it was. It was dependable, too. It would last, forever, that motor. It was really good. Another thing is, you got to keep in mind age. You go back too far, that's not good. I don't care how it looks. Things do wear out. An old used Mercedes-Benz is not a good idea, like I mentioned before, not because of the repair costs, but also because the vehicle, if it's really old, you may look good on the outside, but when you get, inside, it's feeling it, Warranty. Is there one? If not, why not? As you get closer to 10,000, you can expect some sort of warranty from a dealer, and even independent dealer. A better reconditioning appearance, maybe, and more inline service items like hoses and belts and brakes should be better and in good shape. And 10,000, you could get a 30-day warranty from the vehicle, engine and tranny on the vehicle from a dealer. At least some assurance that it's going to hold up to some degree. Then as you get really cheap, you go to buy a $3,000, $4,000 vehicle, they're not going to do anything for you in the future. The guy's going to say to you, look, you know as much about it as I know, as I do. It runs, it drives good, it seems dependable, but I can't tell you it's going to be, it's not going to have a problem 30 days from now. That would be an honest approach for an older vehicle. That's what happened. That's how it works. That's for sure. Options. With the exception of auto or stick and air conditioning in the South, does it have what you need and do they work? If the transmission work, does the air conditioning work? In the South, you got to have air conditioning. You really do. You could drive without it. I've seen guys drive around without it, but I'll tell you, it's tough on you. How about right now? Yesterday, it was 97 degrees. It felt, they said on the news, it said that it would feel like 110. How are you going to drive around in a car like that? The windows down, your head out the window? Using the breeze? No, but it just seems to me that you want to make sure that it works. But are there other options? Do they work? Do things work or don't they work? Are there things you can get along without? If the power windows don't work, okay, fine. Can you get the window down if you have to? Is there a way of doing that on that model? Some models there is. If the power windows don't work, you can still get them down. Maybe not, though. Find that out. Here's a big one. Mileage. Other concerns are at the end of the list in the range are appearance and options and age. But mileage really comes into play. Mileage is a big factor. You can check the title. What was on the title when they bought it? It'll be on the title what it was when that person bought the vehicle. How many miles they're saying is on it now. Make sure the dealer or an individual sign for the mileage. Make sure they give you a mileage statement that this is the actual mileage as far as they know. If they don't, you can expect the mileage to be maybe 50,000 miles more. Dealers don't turn back mileage. Customers don't turn back mileage for 10,000 miles. They turn it back, maybe on a 20,000 miles on a late model, but on an older vehicle, they're going to turn it back. They turn it back 50. Nobody fibs about the mileage just for, a few thousand miles. So you got to get that in writing. And that's, like I mentioned before on podcasts, individuals are just as legally obligated for the mileage to be correct as a dealer. $20,000 fine and a year in prison up to. So setting the speedometer back is a stupid thing for people to do because it's just too easy to get caught. They think they're okay, and then all of a sudden you find out that you go to some garage to get it worked on, and they say, well, that's funny because when I was in here that time, it had 111,000 miles on it. Now it says it got 80. Well, see, the person that sold it to you didn't stop and think that all the places you've been with it, right? Resale history, where did it come from? What proof? Resale value of a model of an old vehicle, $4,000 vehicle, is really not important. But it gives you an idea of future expectancy. If you look at the magazines and it has a good reputation, that's good information. You need to know that. You need to know. The vehicles with good resale value have good resale value in most cases. The primary reason is that they hold up well. If you look at a Honda Accord, which I like Honda, Consumer Reports arguing with Honda all the time. They had a bad time with them, and you got a couple guys on there that are getting influenced by Kia and Hyundai. You can only guess how. But Honda, you go back Hondas 10 years, they're great. I've taken Hondas in trade with 300,000 miles on them. You would have never guessed. You'd have never thought for a minute it had that many miles. They're a really good vehicle. There's others. I'm just saying that, using that as an example. So that resale value gives some idea of how well it's going to hold up. In the magazines, it'll tell you that reputation story. And if you buy a used vehicle for $9,000, well, maybe it's going to be worth something. You know what I'm saying? Maybe when you go to sell it 2 years from now, when the craziness is over and you decide, now I'll go get a nice new car and we're going to sell this one. You know whether it's going to have any resale value. How much are you going to get back? You'd be surprised. You buy a vehicle for $9,000 used, take care of it, it looks good, hasn't changed much. 2 years from now, probably worth 6 or 7 retail, 5,000 on a trade. Yeah, it'll surprise you how much difference it makes. Here's one we've talked about in every episode of the podcast. I think it comes up all the time, and we should talk about it today. Flood check. All used vehicles, all. It matters on even a cheap used because it means repairs with less money to invest, you sure can't fix one a lot. So if you don't have a lot of money, you got to be careful about the flood. Some items change a little as the price goes up for a number of reasons, but flood is the way it is. Flood affects any vehicle. I don't care how old it is or how new it is. And you need to know about it. You need to check for it. And you need to avoid it. Even on you think, well, it's a cheap used car. I don't care. It's going to have a tremendous effect on it. And if it's a flood vehicle used car, when was it? Was it a flood a year ago? Or was it a flood 3 years ago? The longer a flood vehicle is out of the water, the more the issues that crop up. Yep, it's definitely a time factor. Buying it from a dealer is a plus because even as an as-is vehicle from a dealer will have a certain amount of believability if it's coming from a dealer. They don't want a lawsuit. They're not going to, the higher price means you can plan on keeping it longer. You can expect more from the vehicle in terms of the use and dependability. Again, price isn't going to change much, maybe 10% on a vehicle that's under $10,000 or less, right? Maybe not even 10% on a $10,000 one, right? If priced fairly to begin with, I'm talking about. If they've done a fair price, if they've used the books, if they're doing a fair pricing, you're not going to get any more than 10%. Usability is high and so is track record because it's a larger investment as compared to the $3,000 and $4,000 vehicles. So safety is big, and you can expect more safety features on that $10,000 range. Over $5,000, you may be looking, at a few vehicles and can begin to compare and research a bit more as you go up in price. The selection at the dealer locations will definitely be bigger. It's not, you go around looking for a good $3,000 car. There aren't a lot of them. Pretty slim pickings. But as you move up the scale of price, you start getting a larger inventory, larger number of vehicles available for you to. Even on a late model, title remains number one. But if you're buying from a dealer, there's less worry about the title in that range, right? Because the larger investment, other things come up like finance, shopping, and fuel mileage and stuff like that. But you still got to check on the title. You still need to know. The title can screw up everything. That's why it's so important. People can lose. I know people that bought vehicles and have had them talk to me and send me emails, and they didn't get the title when they bought it, and they still don't have the title, and they never got the title and were never able to drive it, and the people never got tracked down by the cops for it. Price ranges, vary depending on the product. Obviously, a motorhome has a much higher range for a comparable situation. Motorcycles a lower range with the exception of Harley, whose ranges are a bit higher like the motorhome. But if you're looking at a used motorhome, a cheap used motorhome is not at $4,000 or $5,000. It's probably $25,000. That would be a cheap one. A cheap Harley would be $8,000 or $9,000. That would be a cheap Harley. A cheap Harley is a higher price than a brand new Honda. It is funny how the market is, right? When financing used below $5,000, most banks will treat it like a personal loan. They're not going to let you take out a car loan as you standard are, where you get a book with payments and all that stuff. You'll get a book with payments, but the security is going to have to be a personal security, and that means it's going to require a little better credit. If your credit is weak, they'll of course charge a higher rate and still use the vehicle being sold as collateral. But with bad credit, they may not even give you the loan on something cheap. And yet approve you for something that's $15,000. That's just how the bank thinks. They're trying to avoid issues in the future. There are other savings with a very cheap vehicle, though. There's some other good reasons for having a cheap used vehicle. You could cut the insurance down to cover only the basics. Oh, yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? Get rid of the collision. If you only got a $3,000 to $4,000 vehicle, what do you need collision for? The cost of the collision is, half the cost of the vehicle or what it would be worth. So collision means it's your fault. It's still, if someone runs into you, you're still covered for the damage. Collision insurance, you're only going to pay if it's your fault. If the vehicle gets damaged, it'll often be totaled out by the insurance company up rather than fixed anyway if it's an older vehicle. And then the book will determine what you get. If they do fix it in the Carfax rating, won't matter as much as the resale value. Carfax is important, but not as important as it is on the later model one and resale value. Assuming there's any, by the time you get rid of the vehicle, any resale to it at all. I mean, sometimes people keep a vehicle till it's literally dead, which is okay. It's probably a good move in this market. Cheap used vehicle makes you worry while traveling, but if you're taking a long trip, let's say you buy cheap to get by, $4,000, drive back and forth to work till the market straightens out, and it'll straighten out, I guarantee you, when Mr. Biden's regime is gone. I don't care even if it's another, somebody like Robert Kennedy Jr. I mean, he's a Democrat, but when those people are sane about the economy, and so things will straighten out. But you buy a $4,000 vehicle to get by, you can do that without having any collision insurance. You're probably okay. 2.5 years from now, you decide to get rid of it, and there's not much left. You can still, it doesn't owe you anything. You've gotten by without any repairs. If you drove 45,000 miles, that means that each mile was less than 10 cents. Try that on a new vehicle. That's about 4 times that, right? So the beauty of it is that it may not be worth anything a couple of years from now, but you know what? Does it have to be? That, really doesn't owe you anything. And it probably would be anyway. It'd still be worth $1,500 or $1,000 or something. You're still going to get something back. They're tremendous. Investment-wise, if you look at the cost-benefit ratio, they're wonderful. They're just not dependable. So rent a car. You're going to take a trip, rent something. Those older used are seldom stolen and broken into. That's another advantage. You don't see people robbing cheap 10-year-old cars off the street, breaking into them to steal the radio. They don't do that. The old vehicles don't get that kind of, they don't have that exposure. A decision about fixing them is simpler. Yes, the least expensive way. That's the decision. One thing that does become more important is the brand. Brands with great dependability are also the best old vehicles. That's just the way it is. They cost a bit more, but the wear and tear from mileage matters a lot less. In a way, those with good resale value are still king. If you're buying from an individual instead of a dealer, please be aware that the clear title is paramount. That is important. Pressure of wanting and that hard to find used might be there, but a bad title ruins everything in a hurry. I'm telling you, it takes your money, maybe for good. You may not ever get it back. Take the vehicle to a tech, because every used car dealer will recon a vehicle a little bit, right? I mean, it's paramount. The pressure of wanting that hard to find used might be there. It's for them too, just like you. That hard to find used is hard for them too. So, but they want to avoid lawsuits. They don't want any big problems. So when you get an as-is vehicle, a cheap one from a dealer, they're going to make sure that the brakes work and the lights work and things like that. I mean, you got to check it over to be sure, but I don't think you'll have any problem there. But now an individual, they don't. They don't have to. Your tech must look it over to tell that. That's the thing. You got to get your tech in there. He's the person that will make a difference. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, there are many categories of use. Now let's talk about the more unusual, more risky units. There are a few subcategories in these risky units, but we'll talk about them. Save money is always a good idea, but what about buying a vehicle with a salvage title to save money? Bad idea. Salvage title means a vehicle was totaled by insurance. Could be a wreck, a death. In some states, dying in the vehicle totals it. A flood, yuck. Who knows what can go wrong? I fell out of a plane, so I don't know. But, salvage vehicles will have a, restructured title, it'll be called. They'll take it once dealer buys a salvage vehicle at the auction and then brings it home, fixes it up, and then takes it and has it inspected by the state, and then it's a, rebuilt vehicle. And if you got a rebuilt title, avoid it like a plague. First question would be, was it totaled? What makes it salvage? Why was it salvage? What was done to fix it, the frame, replaced, straightened? In my time in the auto industry, I've never seen a salvage vehicle that did not end up having issues of some sort. That's why price is half or less than half. The other savings will be very cheap vehicle. Most banks will not finance a vehicle with a salvage title. So if they want you to see the title or they ask you, that question, it would have to be a personal loan that requires better credit and has a higher interest rate because there is no collateral. When if it's a salvage title, you can't get a loan. And that would cover, in most banks, a rebuilt title. If it says rebuilt on the title, they're not lending any money on it, period. And they shouldn't. You'll have to get a personal loan, which that's tougher. Probably no warranty, or one from the selling dealer. It shows salvage on the Carfax. You won't be able to buy a warranty either. You can't get a company to cover you with a rebuilt title or a salvage title. Nope. You're out luck. That's it. That's why I say stay away from those. You could buy one 30 or 50% below book, so what? It doesn't do you any good if you're fixing it all the time. What you need to know: why is it salvage? How is it fixed? If you're still looking at one anyway, but don't, Am I okay without a warranty? Even if you're a tech. Let's say you're a tech and you're looking at a vehicle. It looks great. It was a salvage vehicle. How is it fixed? Is it, does it check out okay? You're never going to be able to get away from salvage, though. It's always going to say rebuilt on the title. There's no way to get rid of that I'm aware of. Now, don't confuse a salvage title with an as-is title. They're not the same. Although salvage is sold as is, obviously, or a rebuilt title is sold as is, without any recourse, no matter what the problem, should one develop, they don't have to do anything. All outside companies are out of the deal. No warranty, but no basic consideration legally. You buy a rebuilt title, tough luck with everything. As is, but not salvage, will be safe to drive on public roads, brakes and lights, but zero protection for runnability like a transmission or engine in the future. As is just what it indicates. You're buying a vehicle and accept its current condition, good or bad. You're buying and you accept all the responsibilities for that unit. You're gambling because I assume you'd be doing that because you're saving money. That's okay. There are some exceptions that could come up requiring an attorney or an AG in your state, but a dealership selling a vehicle as is does not allow that dealer to sell critically unsafe vehicles. So selling as is doesn't mean they're selling you something that's not safe. They're probably selling it as is because it's got the engine smokes or the train, whatever. But it's safe to drive. Vehicles that are unsafe to drive are sold with what's called a junk title. That means it could be unsafe for the road and almost always is, but was not a salvage that made it drivable. So it wasn't a repaired salvage. A junk title means it's just not safe for the road, and it's just what it says. It's junk. And some people buy those dealers to sell them for parts or to steel weight or whatever. I recommend you buy a regular standard vehicle. I don't believe you should buy a salvage, a junk, an as-is, any of those. I completely understand why you might do it, but you shouldn't. Even a tech, I don't recommend you do that because you still got to pay that monthly payment. I don't care. Sometimes a salvage vehicle looks great and drives great, but the long haul is almost never a happy story. I can't remember one. As-is can be a good investment if the as-is pertains mostly to cosmetics and accessories, not the drivetrain. So if it's beat up on the interior and all the seats are ripped up and they're selling it as is, because that's not going to matter if it's got some dents in it, as long as the engine and tranny are good and the tires are good. Junk title vehicles, no, don't buy one. I don't care. Unless you're a junkyard, right? Or looking for a demolition derby ride. Junk is just what it says it is. It is junk. The oddball categories are for oddball situations. Buyer beware. This episode covers the under 10,000 used vehicle and under 25,000 motorhome, or maybe under 10,000 Harley, or under 5,000 standard motorcycle. She could give you all a good start on what to watch out for and how to buy those older vehicles. They can be a great investment, I'm telling you. Older vehicles can be really, really, really a great investment in terms of cost-benefit ratio. You find an old Ford truck in good shape, it's a great buy compared to the new one. Usually. Now, some dealers will get that in trade and mark it up to some stupid price, and then it's not anymore. But generally speaking, if you buy an older Ford truck, as long as his frame is good and the body's good, you're okay. Well, that's Deal Talk for this week. If you have a question, request, or even a comment, please call or email me. Callers, it's 407-801-4071. That's 407-801-4071. Or email dealtalkpodcast@gmail.com. You can also email dealtalk@mail.com. Please don't forget to do a review when you get a chance, but more importantly, tell your friends and neighbors about the podcast. They'll save some money and you'll be your hero. Get a copy of The Informed Buyer from Amazon or Nook. Unlike everything else that's inflated to ridiculous numbers, it's $3. It's been $3 since it came out in 2015. Even after any rewrites, it was $3. You know, you can't beat that deal. Inflation is murderous, though, isn't it? Oh, boy. And they're trying to say it's 3%. It's 3% from last month. It's almost 30% from when Biden took office. And remember, every payment you get should be CPI, complete payment information. When they quote your payment, you want to know what amount they used to figure that payment, how many months they based it on, what the interest rate is they used, and any required down payment to get to those terms. You want to know if there's anything. And if you're paying cash or doing your own financing, you want a price that includes every single item that's required to buy the vehicle. That's the plates, the tax, the dealer fee, any market options, everything. You want a figure that is totally OTD, out the door.